Now, less than a month before the climate change conference in Paris, France, the Democratic Republic of Congo is being applauded for showing a serious commitment to reduce their land use emissions than more populated countries. Now, reports by the Union of Concerned Scientists says Congo has presented a robust and more convincing plan compared to Brazil, India and Indonesia, the other rainforest countries. The scientists argue that small countries are doing more to limit global warming emissions in the agriculture, forestry and other land use. Now, joining me in the studio to give some more insight into this is Doug Boucher. He's the director of the Tropical Forest and Climate Initiative at UCS and the author of this report. Doug, great to have you on the show. Now, your analysis revealed that you found smaller countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo are doing more to reduce their land use emissions than even more populated countries. Now, what are they doing differently, Doug?
Well, I should be clear, we analyzed not what they're doing currently, but what they plan to do in the decade of the 2020s. And as you say, we found more ambitious and particularly more detailed, more specific plans on the part of the smaller countries compared to the bigger ones, not only bigger developing countries, but also developed countries. The smaller countries are giving more concrete plans. They often have very specific numbers associated with them in terms of what they plan to do, how many hectares, how much it will cost, and how much they anticipate this will reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, particularly from agriculture and forests. So particularly taking into account their lesser capabilities, their smaller economies, they really are actually doing better than the big countries.
Well, Doug, the report also analyzed a country's so-called intended nationally determined contributions to the UN, basically their action plans. Now, what were your overall findings from the countries you looked at?
Yes. We found that although there were some countries that really took this very seriously and did it well, and particularly with respect to the land sector, which is what we looked at, overall, the level of detail, the level of ambition was not what we would hope. The land sector represents a fourth of greenhouse gas emissions, a fourth of the cause of dangerous climate change. So one would expect to see quite ambitious and specific plans. And although some particular countries did have those, overall, it was disappointing. It was not commensurate with either the importance of climate change or the importance of these emissions to climate change.
Well, Doug, in light of your findings, how do you think this will shape negotiations, of course, at the upcoming climate conference in Paris?
Well, I hope it will give more influence to some of the smaller countries that indeed have done a good job at analyzing this sector. Certainly we've seen in the past that some groups of very small countries have had an influence all out of proportion to their size. For example, on some of the negotiations, the Africa group has weighed in quite strongly and influenced the direction. In other cases, the small island states, the tiny island nations, which are really very, very small but are directly threatened by climate change, which causes the rise in sea level that may actually cause their countries to disappear. And they've used their moral voice, their authority to influence the negotiations. So we're hoping to see that again in Paris.
Well, thank you so much, Doug, for those insights. Of course, he's joining us from Washington, D.C.